Hello, it's July 2023. They thought they were doing the right thing, but it doesn't mean they were doing the right thing. What does that mean? Now, before I get into this video, I want to make two very clear statements. First, I'm not stating or implying anything negative towards anyone in this video, nor am I promoting anyone in this video. The second thing I would like to say, that I'm not stating or implying that I'm for or against anything, for example, that's been imposed over the past several years. I've made my position very clear in how far I'm willing to go to support, stand behind my decisions, even when it's life-threatening. There's other videos about that. Now, going back to the topic, they thought they were doing the right thing. And that's the biggest problem we see in society today. And I've talked about this over many years, for say over even a decade. Now, this statement, they thought they were doing the right thing, even applies to, for example, governing bodies, professions, people in professions, and I've highlighted over the years busybodies. And more times than not, we see doing the right thing, or what people perceive to be doing the right thing, has devastating consequences, sometimes even costing people their lives. And all these things can be avoided. But that's really not going to be the focus of this video. What I really want to highlight here is a few examples of people thinking that they're doing the right thing. Now, we know since, well, past several years or whatever's right now, people are defying things that are being imposed. For example, large gatherings. I was going to segue for a moment. We've also seen how other people will, using some slang, will rat out others because others are not going along with it, not complying. I digress. But we see churches, for example, wanting to have gatherings, and during when things are being imposed, when they're told they're not. There are countless of churches who said no. And the pastors, ministers, whatever, who were against it, dealt with it in the courts successfully, because they realized that their primary objective is to, for example, from their perspective, preaching the gospel, looking after, using Christian terminology, their flock. That is paramount. That is their objective. Not to be involved in anything political. Now, however, we do see sometimes one or the other will go overlap, and then there's a little problem. But we see countless of other pastors, ministers, churches, congregations who fought this in court successfully. Now, there are some stories where, depending on what country, what state or province you're in, maybe weren't so successful, but there are statements made by judges in that which do allow for successful appeals, and apparently we're still waiting for those. But these people with the churches fought and are fighting in the courts. They had a charge or even a ticket, and they said, okay, we take this fight to the court. They have no criminal records, no drama sensationalized on television of their arrests in the middle of highways and everything else. They looked after their flock, their people, their congregation, and have been successful overall. And that's the way it should be. Now, I am going to segue for a moment that there are or have been, certain belief systems, religions, for some strange reason that were exempt. And I've highlighted this several years ago in videos, how they didn't have to comply with anything, even gatherings up to 1,500 people. It does kind of appear that one particular group has been isolated, but I mean, that's a whole different tangent. And I did discuss this in videos several years ago. So why am I highlighting this example now? Because there's a lot of people, for example, in truther and freedom movements, that have glorified people, for example, who thought they were doing the right thing, but didn't do the right thing. They took it way beyond something a Hollywood movie would write. All romanticized. They romanticized who they are. They romanticized the events and the outcome. Unfortunately, they have criminal records, and they're facing court for charges, and some very serious charges. Now, I've highlighted over the past decade how most people in society, all societies, lack critical thinking skills, an extensive knowledge base, and cannot separate emotions when making conclusions or making decisions. That ties into they thought they were doing the right thing. And most people, even in the truther and freedom movement groups, can relate to those kind of people because that's who they are. Now, again, not everyone in society is like that. And I've also highlighted, for example, how professions, governing bodies, and so forth, they draw from the human gene pool. So if most people lack all these things, cannot do these things, then that's going to reflect in the percentages. And we see that. The whole vetting of people and professions and stuff have long gone. Just because you can obtain a position, for example, of some sort of authority or profession or anything, doesn't mean you should. I'm just going to segue again for a moment. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Sometimes you have to apply some simple common sense. You have to evaluate what's going on, for example, in the world, and make decisions that could be life impacting, not necessarily on life itself, but have a profound effect on one's future. But anyway, I digress. Now, these people who have been hyped up, and much of it is simply a marketing campaign to avoid responsibility, accountability for their own actions. But again, I'm digressing, but these type of people are allowed to be hyped up, sensationalized, because this behavior encourages others to behave the same way, which allows the opportunity for more things to be imposed, leading to, as a descriptive, tyranny, and definitely injustices in the future. It's all part of, as a descriptive, a bigger agenda. It's just interesting how, especially truthers and freedom types, are missing that. But again, we go to the majority of the people and their mindset, what they lack, what they can't do, etc. So my whole point here is really to give you something to think about. There are a lot of people who were opposed, for example, over the past several years, things being imposed on them. They didn't like it. A lot of people, I would say most people, it's not so much about tyranny and injustice from their perspective. It's, I don't want to be told what to do. And how we know that, there's a lot of people who were totally for everything that was being imposed and everything else. But when they were told they had to, then they had a problem, just like little kids. It has nothing to do with the tyranny and injustice from perspectives, but I don't want to be told what to do. We do need some sort of social order. Now, I'm not stating or implying that what's happening in the world today with governing bodies and laws and everything else, they're all just. Absolutely not. If you know who I am and everything else, you'd understand how ridiculous that is to even think that that's my approach here, and it's not. But we do need some sort of social order. Anyway, I really just want to give you some things to think about. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.
Gives me first-hand knowledge and experience. I have given a plethora of independent evidence to support my story.
Do you get it now?
And what whole program needs to get shut down? This is bullshit. This is so sick of this. Like, I've been dealing with this program for a year and a half, and I've seen what happened to members, I've seen what happened to staff. And there's all behind the scenes crap that no one knows about. I need to get the hell out of here.
Listen to this and write it down if you can't remember it. You're never going to outgrow warfare. You simply must learn to fight. I hear people say, when is it going to get easier? When you die.